Good morning and good evening, and welcome to ICAS Fall Symposium Special 2022. I'm Shinja Kim, President and Chair of ICAS, and I would like to thank everyone for joining our program today. And it is my pleasure to introduce today's special guest speaker, General Paul LaCamera, who will address the issues and challenges facing the Korean Peninsula and the U.S. national security. General Paul LaCamera assumed the command of United Nations Command, ROK U.S. Combined Forces Command, and U.S. Forces Korea, UNC, CFC, USFK on July the 2nd, 2021. Today, we are particularly proud that General LaCamera continues the tradition of his predecessors who spoke before the ICAS audience, and they are, in an alphabetical order, General Robert Abrams, General B.B. Bell, General Vincent Brooks, General Curtis Mike Scaparrotti, General Walter Sharp, and General John Tillelly. As a native of Westwood, Massachusetts, General LaCamera commissioned as an infantry officer from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 1985. His education includes a Bachelor of Science from the U.S. Military Academy and a Master of Arts degree from the U.S. Naval War College. General LaCamera most recently served as the Commanding General of the United States Army's largest service component command, U.S. Army Pacific headquartered at Fort Shafter, Hawaii, with portions of the command forward deployed and based throughout the Indo-Pacific. During his 36 years of service, General LaCamera had honored to lead and serve with members of all military branches, interagency colleagues, and coalition partners from platoon through corps and a combined joint task force. General LaCamera's past assignments include the 82nd Airborne Division, 13th Airborne Corps, U.S. Army Special Operations Command, and Joint Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He also served the 2nd Infantry Division, the 8th U.S. Army, Republic of Korea. He participated in numerous contingency operations, including Operation Just Cause in Panama, Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti, Operation Anaconda in Afghanistan, and multi-deployments in support of operations. Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation New Dawn, and Operation Inherent Resolve in Iraq and Syria. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's such an honor to have General LaCamera here with us today. I hope you enjoy the program, and let's welcome General LaCamera. Thank you.
Okay, General, you're all yours.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for that kind introduction. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your invitation. I'm grateful to be here with you today. As we look around the world today, we see many challenges to international peace and security. Challenges such as COVID remind us of what starts locally can rapidly develop into regional and global issues. Russian aggression in Ukraine reminds us that great power competition has never left, and the threat of such aggression poses to our liberal democracies. It also demonstrates that the strategic environment is more complicated and complex than ever. This is a conflict that is not just taking place inside cities like Kherson, but is also waged in the information, environment, and space domain. Information, cyberspace. I'll talk a little bit about the multi-domain and how we have to start thinking about things differently. As President Yoon recently said in his Liberation Day speech, the mandate of the times calls for countries that share universal values to stand in solidarity to defend freedom and human rights and achieve peace and prosperity for the citizens of the world. To secure peace and prosperity in Northeast Asia, we must grow the alliance from a bilaterally focused system and build our coalition to deter the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and maintain the rules-based international order. Coalitions think strategic depth, international legitimacy. The rules-based international order founded after World War II and defended first here on the Korean Peninsula in 1950 has brought much prosperity to the Republic of Korea. The Republic of Korea-U.S. alliance may have begun out of military necessity, but our continued cooperation reflects our shared values of individual rights, rule of law, and market-based economies. Since the armistice was signed, our cooperation evolved beyond security issues and set the conditions for the Republic of Korea to become one of the top economies of the world. The result of such cooperation is reflected in spectacular growth of Iraq's GDP, going from $158 in 1960 to over $31,000 in 2020. South Korea, once a recipient of foreign aid, has undergone a remarkable transformation to become a net exporter of foreign assistance, as demonstrated in 2009, when South Korea became the first former aid recipient to join the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. However, our competitors and adversaries would seek to unmake or change this prosperity. Nations like Russia, China, and DPRK seek a different world order. Our alliance seeks a rules-based order founded on cooperation. The world order they seek is based on coercion, intimidation, and threats. Such aggression demonstrates our competitors and adversaries' willingness to forcibly pursue their preferred world order. International outrage alone will not dissuade them. Therefore, we must remain vigilant against threats to the international rules-based system that has made Korea so prosperous. These threats are occurring in new domains, and to effectively confront these threats, we must think, act, and operate differently. We must remain aware that a third party, a nation state, or other actor, a non-state actor with state actor power, could attempt to intervene or influence our decision-making in our alliance. We cannot be reactive to the threats posed by DPRK actions in this multidimensional strategic environment. It is imperative to remember that the Korean War has not ended. The peninsula is still an armistice, and DPRK remains a threat to this region and to the world. The DPRK continues to try to coerce its neighbors by threatening the Republic of Korea with nuclear destruction. DPRK's nuclear posture statement released last week says that DPRK will use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear states if it deems a non-nuclear state is colluding with nuclear states. DPRK provocations go beyond its illegal missile or nuclear programs. Its information operations spread dis, and malinformation and propaganda around the world. It uses cyber operations to conduct espionage and generate revenue for the regime. Its announcement that DPRK will be selling munitions to arm Russia's illegal war in Ukraine further demonstrates how North Korea is a bad actor in the international community. If conflict on the peninsula were to resume, it would be due to DPRK aggression, and its impact will reverberate throughout the world, just as Russia aggression in Ukraine has. Physical and human losses of such conflict would be devastating because of the threat's capabilities are more powerful and more sophisticated. War in South Korea, the world's 10th largest economy, could mean many countries will suffer trade and economic losses. The threat to both our nation's security and best interests extends beyond the peninsula. North Korean aggression would ensure any conflict on the Korean peninsula would be a regional conflict. We must remember that China and DPRK have a mutual defense treaty. That treaty is the only defense treaty China and North Korea have with any nation. Deterring DPRK will require us to be able to provide a combat credible force capable of thinking, operating, and acting in combined joint interagency. More importantly, we need to think multi-domain. We've gone from joint, combined, and interagency to having to think in a multi-domain aspect. Providing the combat credible force is the military's role in what the U.S. has termed integrated deterrence. Deterrence is no longer simply having more missiles than our adversaries. Deterring DPRK and assuring Korean people requires a whole of government approach, incorporating all the elements of government power: diplomatic, information, military, economic, intelligence, law enforcement, and I would add in technology as an element of power for our governments. We must invest in the right mix of technology, operational concept, and capabilities to operate effectively. We support our interagency partners in deterring DPRK by doing 5 things. First, for us, it's we are here to defend our homelands, and I put an S on the end of homelands because it's not just we're here to defend the Republic of Korea, but we're here because it's in the best interest of the United States. We're here to defend our homeland. Given the fact that KJU has threatened the United States, it's all the more important. I also tell that to the United Nations Command sending states, that if he can reach Washington, D.C. or the shores of the United States, surely he can reach the capitals of the sending states, to include some of our adversaries. Next is the alliance. We have got to strengthen the alliance. It's an intangible. We cannot take our alliance for granted. It's something that needs care and feeding each and every day as we move forward. We also need to understand that countries act in their own best interest, but we have to continue to communicate with each other going forward. Next is really our main effort. That is to prepare for combat. The most egregious offense or crime that a commander or any military leader can commit is to commit untrained soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, guardians, and civilians into harm's way. As a commander, I'll never be satisfied with the amount of training that we have, and it's perishable. When you think turnover, when you think people moving on to the next level of command, or in there, we've always got to we're going to constantly bring on new individuals, given the fact that the Korean population is only going to do an 18-month conscription. We've got to figure out how do we maintain our combat readiness. How does that work when it comes to mobilization? What are those impacts? And as we introduce new technologies into our formation and with mobilization to deal with a crisis or conflict, what is our onboarding, and how do we keep pace with the technology that's moving forward? But again, main effort is combat preparedness. Next are coalitions. The United Nations Command is not a coalition. It's got sending states, but it can, as long as the UNSCR still exists, we can take on individual more countries as we go forward. That's our strategic depth and our international legitimacy. But that's not the only way for countries to help. There's always the bilateral relationship that they have with the Republic of Korea. And that would be a conversation that we would have going forward with the country, with the military leaders, on how best to use any assistance, whether lethal or non-lethal, in a crisis or conflict, or even in the day-to-day protection of the Korean Peninsula, and more importantly, Northeast Asia. And our last line of effort, or our only line of effort, is taking care of people. Clearly, you've all heard the term mission first, service members always. And so we've got to make sure that we take care of the people that we have. And more importantly, one of our goals here is to make the Republic of Korea tour a tour of choice for our service members. When you think of our move out of Yongsan down here to Camp Humphreys and the amenities that the country has provided for us here, it's as I tell soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, guardians, that this isn't, not only is it not your father or your uncle's Korea, it's not your older brother or older sister's Korea either. The quality of life here is much improved, and it really is. It should be an assignment of choice going forward. Finally, our President Yoon has also spoken about the vision of South Korea becoming a global pivotal state. Indeed, given the ROK's location on the Asian continent, the Republic of Korea is the linchpin of security for all Northeast Asia. A lot of people hear the term first, second, third island chain. I would argue that we're west of the first island chain on the Asian continent, not to give anybody a geography lesson, but an extremely important piece of terrain over many years. My best military advice for the ROK military is to seize the moment to be a coalition leader. An African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We say kachi kapshida, we go together. Coalitions are key to our future of continued regional security and stability. Coalitions embody a whole of government approach and incorporate a broad range of perspectives. They ensure we put the best minds on the toughest problems. They offer diversity as we move forward. They provide strategic depth and that international legitimacy. Coalitions also maintain the international rules-based order with an eye on China and Russia, remembering our alliance extends beyond deterring DPRK. I understand the difficulties of fighting within coalitions. Each nation has its individual interests and caveats. They will always be there. As a commander at several levels, I've had to deal with those national caveats. And the United States has a national caveat, has national caveats too. It may be the reason why we have the 38th parallel, and we have an armistice. However, a country by itself cannot go against the crisis of global scope or scale. As Churchill noted, the only thing worse than fighting a war with allies is fighting a war without them. Amid current challenges around the globe, we're reminded that we are in competition of norms, narratives, and legitimacy. The ROC and the United States prefer a multilateral system based in cooperation and shared values like individual freedom. However, it's important to remember that there are always people out there who want to change the current world order. When diplomacy fails, the expectation is that we will fight and we will win, but we cannot do it alone. That's why I believe that to secure peace and prosperity in Northeast Asia, we must grow the alliance from bilaterally focused system and build our coalition to deter DPRK and maintain rules-based international order. If you can make the argument that President Putin has made NATO stronger, you could also make the argument that KJU and his weapons testing may have made our bilateral and trilateral and multilateral relationships stronger with the threats that he's currently posing. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I will take any questions you have.
Thank you, General. Before we go ahead, Bruce, let me make a quick comment. ICAS is not an agent of any foreign government or foreign principles. There's no foreign funds involved in ICAS activities and programs. Thank you. Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. Given that Kim Jong-un has been told for decades that he cannot win a war only using conventional weapons and now has developed a large number of nuclear weapons, we believe, how far have you asked your staff to go in researching how NATO is prepared for the combination of conventional and nuclear warfare in the 1980s? For example, establishing requirements for dispersal airfields and sustaining command and control in a nuclear environment.
I don't know who they've reached out to, but we've been given direction to update our operational plan, and all that is being taken into account. It's all part of the mission task analysis process.
Thank you. Sean Creamer.
Good morning, sir. Good to see you again. Just wanted to ask you if you would like to give any thoughts on how the alliance team, uniquely positioned on the Asian continent, can improve both assurance to the ROC and other allies and partners in the region, while simultaneously deterring North Korea and other competitors who are armed with asymmetric and strategic weapons.
Hey, Sean, good to see you. I guess you didn't fall very far when you left here. Kind of goes back to our main effort there. Doing the thing that militaries do, and that's to prepare for combat. Plan for the worst, hope for the best. But our unique contribution is that piece of training each and every day, and working with our allies, partners, and friends, developing the bilateral relationships, as you know, that South Korea has with a lot of other countries, not necessarily part of the United Nations Command. And so encouraging, and I think one of the main lessons learned coming out of the battlefields in Europe right now is that interoperability piece. And so working with like-minded countries is a way to go forward. So being prepared to back up the other elements that go back to the integrated deterrence, being able to back up the other elements of national power, by being prepared to defend South Korea. And fight tonight cannot just be a bumper sticker. There's got to be real teeth behind those words.
Thank you. Olli Heinonen, please.
Thank you. Actually, I was not prepared to talk, but let's make a question then, General. Thank you very much. It was a very good introduction. Now, North Korea has published that new doctrine for the use of nuclear weapons. How does this change our doctrines and our defense and deterrence in the Korean Peninsula?
I go back to my comment earlier. Our capabilities have changed. We've been directed to update our op plan, so our capabilities have changed. His capabilities have changed. The terrain has changed. Clearly in South Korea. I don't know when the last time you've been here, sir, but there's new developments each and every day that have to be taken into account. A lot of people want to read minds. I tell the staff if we could read minds, we were going to Las Vegas or we're going to go to Wall Street. We have to prepare against capabilities that he possesses, and then we have to work to confirm or deny it through intelligence, not just collection, but the analysis going forward. And then again, we have to. Our job here is again to prepare for the worst, prepare for combat, but at the same time support the other elements of national power, specifically the diplomatic, political side, and then in the information space also.
I have an additional question, if I may. So now that the doctrine is somewhat diffuse or unclear, and it also, I think, has a lot of risks on misunderstanding, etc. So are we going to look some kind of better or new red line or communication channels with the North Koreans so that we can avoid maybe some misinterpretation?
I don't know if you know this or not. I mean, we have communications through the United Nations Command up at the Joint Security Area in Panmunjom that we pass messages and can pass messages to. I believe that the Koreans, both North and South, have reestablished their communications channels, and I know there are other diplomatic channels that are occurring, and whether it's at the United Nations Command or through other bilateral and multilateral intermediaries going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tong Kim, please.
Thank you, Sanju. Thank you, General, for doing this for us. As you have explained and discussed recent development with North Korea's nuclear program, given DPRK's latest codification of the use of its nuclear weapons, how confident or comforted are you with the current state of deterrence that you have in your hand? Or what else we gotta do? You already discussed some of it over multiple domains and what we have to do in multilaterally and jointly with the South Korea as well. But how are you personally confident the kind of a deterrence that you have on your hand today against the possible first use of nuclear weapons by DPRK?
It's a little bit of a loaded question. As a commander, I don't know if you should ever be comfortable. Yeah, I'll just leave it as that. It's the old be proud but don't be satisfied. There's what we know, what we don't know, and what we need to know, and that's all part of the day-to-day business here in the peninsula. I'm working not just with the ROC, my military counterparts, but the government, the interagency, and our other allies, partners, and friends in the region. I know that's not the answer you were looking for, but that's what you're going to get.
Thank you. Don Kirk.
General, looking back on the recent military exercises, the first in 5 years, how confident are you? This sort of relates to Mr. Thong Kim's question. How confident are you that they really were sufficient to answer a whole lot of needs and to cover a whole lot of lost ground, to make up for a lot of lost ground? How seriously did those exercises go? By the way, I'm a journalist. Journalists were given no opportunity to cover the exercises. We were actually prevented from covering just about all of them. But maybe you could tell us, make up for some of what we missed by telling us what you missed and what you would have liked to have done and how well or they went and how, or perhaps maybe what problems you had in accomplishing what you wanted.
First of all, you're talking to the wrong people, because we did have journalism out there, journalists out there, and we did, some of them did actually get to go see part of the live fires that were
About 2 or 3, I think, on a very limited basis.
Yeah, well, baby steps, right? To your point, I go back to my comment that I made earlier. I'll never be satisfied with the level of training. There's always more that we can do. There's live, virtual, constructive things that were added. This is not the first it's the first exercise where they added the ULCHI portion back in for the government. And I don't have the insights into what other training that the previous administration had done. But we do in our exercises, again, live, virtual, constructive, we do role play that interaction piece. So that commanders at all levels have to deal with pressures from above, laterally, and from subordinates. So is it, short of, what we've experienced in real conflict? But no, I mean, we try and push it to the realism as much as possible, going forward. And my guess is, there's lessons that'll come out of this. And, we're already in discussions on how we make this exercise even better. But I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that we haven't done this maybe at this level, but this exercise has been done over the last several years, but just not in the same capacity. Again, I go back to my other comment of there's turnover, right? There's constant turnover in each of the positions. And so focusing on the basics, having the right standard operating procedures, and teaching people how to think, not what to think. It's not a checklist that's going to get us there. Governments have been practicing this for years. It's bringing it all together, which takes a lot of resources to do, as you can imagine, when you're still trying to run a country on a day-to-day basis. So we're moving in the right direction. I think there's always been progress moving forward, but there'll always be people who will criticize the level of participation.
Thank
Sure.
you. David D.
If I may ask a quick follow-up. Every year, the Marines used to land at Pohang, and journalists could go down there and see them crawling up for the beach. We didn't see that landing this year. I'm not even sure there was a Marine landing at Pohang. Was there, and how did it go?
No, there was not that I know of, that there was a landing at Pohang. But that's going back to, I think, the old Team Spirit days of where there was a much greater force-on-force field training exercise. Perfect world, that would be the goal to move towards. That takes lots of resources, but to your point, that doesn't mean that beach landings, combined joint forcible entry operations are not occurring someplace for us to practice. And so think of it as drills that then, our job is to then bring it all together, synchronize and orchestrate it in a much larger. So think of it as task training that is occurring, not just here, but in other places of the forces that would fight.
Thank you. David Lee, go ahead.
Thank you, General. So President Yoon's foreign policy has been described as a complete opposite to foreign President Moon's quote unquote appeasement approach to North Korea and China. For example, President Yoon denouncing former President Moon's promise to China to not deploy any additional THAAD systems. So is this contrast between South Korean administration something you consider in the effectiveness of U.S. forces Korea in the coalition? You know, especially given that recent declining approval ratings for President Yoon might indicate that Korean public opinion is again swinging towards an emphasis on cooperation with North Korea and China rather than strict deterrence that President Yoon is trying to kind of emphasize?
I mean, you're describing the operating environment. I'm not going to get into the politics of it. It all plays a role. U.S. politics plays a role. The region's politics plays a role. And my job is not to shape that, but to react to and provide my best military advice to the changes.
Thank you. Larry Nix, go ahead.
Thank you, General LaCamera. You mentioned the broadening of the alliance, making it broader than just deterring the DPRK. And that leads my question to Taiwan. We saw in the Chinese exercises at the time of Speaker Pelosi's visit, I think clearly a rehearsal for an air and naval blockade of Taiwan to force Taiwan to submit to Chinese control. Question I have is, given this heightening of the threat, with a number of U.S. experts now predicting a very possible military move by China within the next 18 months against Taiwan, is the Pentagon, is the Department of Defense, with your support, command support, discussing with South Korean military leaders contingencies for U.S. military support of Taiwan, and what should be the South Korean role, if any, in providing direct military support for that U.S. intervention? And relatedly, is this issue of what would a South Korean role be in that scenario, is this issue being discussed in South Korea, in the parliament, in the press, among the think tanks, and among the public? Is there public discussion of this Taiwan issue and South Korea's role, potential role in it, going on right now?
Yeah, I won't get into specifics, but I go back to my previous comment. You know, what starts local becomes regional and global pretty quickly. I think that's what we've learned the last couple of years, with whether it's Ukraine or whether it's COVID or the other things that have occurred. The attacks on the U.S. in 9/11 and the fight in Iraq and ISIS and how countries came together. But again, my job here is to defend the Korean Peninsula and to maintain peace and stability and security in Northeast Asia. So, with anything, commanders, leaders, we do contingency planning. There is discussion that's ongoing. I mean, there's all in think tanks and whatnot. But I think it's prudent to look at second and third order effects on something that might not be contained, or what would be the second and third order impacts of a Taiwan scenario be. I just think that's good military prudent thinking and planning going forward. I won't get into any specifics. We always have to think about, hey, what is the second and third order effects? What are the second and third order effects of what's happening in Europe right now? and how it's had a disruptive effect on supply chain and some other things, and economics going forward. Again, I go back to my previous statement. The world's getting smaller. It's not getting larger. There could be impacts here, and I think we have to be prepared for them.
Let me just add a point about opinion in this country. If China does attack Taiwan, and if the U.S. reacts as President Biden talked about in Tokyo, with the Japanese Prime Minister standing 6 feet away from him, that he would use U.S. forces to support Taiwan in case of a Chinese attack. If that scenario took place, as some experts are talking about now, I think we need to understand that the Congress, the media, I think think tanks in this country and the American public would expect very strongly South Korea to provide military support to the United States. And I think it's important that South Koreans realize that if this threat continues to get larger, which a lot of people seem to be predicting that it is going to get larger.
Yeah, people can expect all they want. It's countries act in their own best interest, and that'll be up to the Koreans. The Koreans have helped us. They fought with us in Vietnam. They supported us, fought with us in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that's a decision that country will have to make, just like the United States will have to make its own decisions. And you know, our orders here are pretty clear. What our role is here in defending the Korean Peninsula, and maintaining the armistice going forward. So I can't say I disagree with anything you said. I just people are entitled to their opinions, and the Koreans will have to make their own decisions on that.
Thank you, Tara. Go ahead. Cannot hear
Good morning,
you, Tara. Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, good morning, General LaCamera. Thank you for your time and your talk. I have two questions, but I'll just ask one, and it's related to that. Most South Koreans support the alliance, of course, and most South Koreans did not oppose that deployment. It was actually a small group of people, very active, very loud people who did. And they weren't even local people, although they were portrayed to be. Now, they blocked the access to the THAAD base so that the troops and supplies couldn't access the road to the base. And it made things very difficult. What kind of changes have you seen since then? Is there some sort of update regarding the THAAD situation?
There's still protests there. We're able to accomplish our mission. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you. Sang-ho, go ahead.
Thank you, General LaCamera. I'm Sung Sang-ho from Yonhap News Agency. I met you months ago, and you told me that when it comes to North Korea's nuclear testing, you said it's a matter, not a matter of if, but matter of a when. So in terms of the timing, do you have any guess regarding the timing of the North's 7th nuclear testing? And I was also wondering about your guess about the critical factors that may affect North Korea's calculations determining the timing of the testing. And also, I'm wondering, South Korean officials have been saying that if North Korea presses ahead with the nuclear testing, the response will be stronger than usual. So I think that is the statement agreed upon by the US side as well. So can you be a little more specific about what that response might look like? I mean, stronger than usual response. Thank you.
No, I will not go into details on our response options. And the if versus when, I think there's a lot of factors that play into that, weather, and other things that are going on in the world. and capabilities. I think we'll just watch. He's been very clear on where he's headed. And I think I go back to my previous statement about being able to read minds. There may be some external factors that prevent him or delay it, but he's been very clear, and he's come out recently and stated his new nuclear capability or nuclear policy. So now we have to confirm or deny what that is going forward. But I'm not going to get into the specifics of it.
Sir,
Thank you.
one more. Do you have any assessment of your own regarding the intention behind North Korea's unveiling of its nuclear policy that has been enshrined in a law? Thank you.
Well, again, we got to just, we have elements of national power. He's got elements of national power, and information's an element of national power. Go back to the misinformation, disinformation, etc. Information's an element of national power, just like military and economic and diplomatic. I think he's using all the elements of national power, just like we can and should and do.
Thank you. Josh Smith, go ahead. Josh Smith.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Okay, Josh, go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, General. I just wanted to ask, you talked about the need for, expanding the alliance beyond kind of bilateral issues, which I take to mean, kind of the focus on North Korea historically, and look at, securing the rules-based order regionally and globally. Can you expand what you think that should look like at the military level? What can South Korea bring to that? What can the U.S. What does the United States USFK want from South Korea on that? There's been a lot of talk of trade agreements, things like that, but specifically on the military side, how can the alliance address that, and what would that look like? Thank you.
Well, I go back to the statement that the president made about global pivotal power, and the fact that South Koreans have bilateral relationships with other countries. They do sell military equipment to other countries. It needs to remain interoperable with the things that we do, and they do participate in exercises outside of the region. So when it comes to the military side, I think anything we can do to build combat readiness, which is what those exercises are designed to do, build interoperability, build trust between the different organizations and countries, like-minded countries, I think is the direction that, that they've been doing this for a while. So, I mean, it's not really a secret. And I think their plan is to continue to build on that.
William Jung, go ahead.
Hey, sir. Thank you for being here. My name is Major Jung from CGSC. I was talking with one of the Korean officers who are here, and he had mentioned that General Vincent Brooks has said that making North Korea an ally of U.S. could be a possible policy goals. So I just wanted to get your reaction on that, or possibly making North Korea a neutral country. Thank you.
Can you say the statement and the question again, please?
Just a reaction on making North Korea an ally or a neutral country, sir.
I guess my initial reaction is I think all courses of action are on the table if it leads to peace and stability and the safety of the South Korean people. That's what we want, right? I mean, I think all courses of action should be on the table, and we should pursue them equally. I don't necessarily think that that's a military. Again, I go back to all the elements of national power and what is integrated deterrence, and how do we synchronize all the elements of national power to achieve the end state going forward. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my initial thought or my initial reaction to that.
Well, thank you, General. Time is up. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, General. We'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.